Wow.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Is it okay now, Asif? My mic?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay. All right.
Just
I
checking
thought
with you.
somebody was telling you to do that. That's why I didn't do it.
No.
As if that baby blue looks good on you.
Is this baby blue? I don't think it's
That's
baby
not
blue.
baby.
Eh.
I'd say more of a teal, maybe.
I think it's just blue.
It's not just blue.
It's like a gray blue.
It's a gray
yeah,
blue.
it's a darker
Yeah.
blue for sure. It's like a more pastel, darker color blue. It's like we had a
This is the podcast, by the way.
yeah.
Gonna ramble about random shit.
Exactly. Let's talk about a bunch of bullshit today.
Isn't that the
Drake, your haircut
conversations
looks
most
really
people are
great.
used to?
Cameron, where's your glasses, man?
Yeah. So
yeah,
what should we talk about though? What do y'all think?
Okay, I have an idea. Something that you had posted.
I don't like it.
Okay,
Okay.
well, new idea.
That's a sign we
Next.
should do it.
But like something you had posted that we started talking about in the group chat was like, there was something there. I forget what we were talking about, but it was good.
It was amazing.
I don't remember. It was so long ago. It was like 5 days
And
ago.
that's
You know,
a wrap.
that's a fucking lifetime today.
Perfect. In the meeting, I think everybody got it.
Okay, great.
In the podcast.
And then the other thing was today I brought up with one of my clients how when you use TechnoTutor, it's like you're learning to dispel things for yourself, and then you can dispel them for others. And he was asking me like, okay, what do you mean by dispel? And then I was like, well, if you just look at the word spell, right? Most people, when they hear, you know, like casting a spell, if you look at the state of where the world is at, everyone's like in a hypnotic state. They're under a spell, right? But that's because of these, oh man, this is so much fun. It's like incantations, right? Do you know what an incantation, like where that word derives from? Like, I'm assuming everyone knows
Singing?
what an incantation is. No, actually, not exactly singing. The Latin is incantare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means to chant, right? So it's kind of like singing, but to chant is like you're just saying things over and over again, right? And so it's like these words that are in our society, the media, they say things over and over again. And then another definition for incantare was to bewitch, which means to cast a spell on, right? And so it's like we are learning how to spell, like by using our TechnoTutor, we're learning to spell and break spells, right? And then within all of that, we become, and I was making the reference to what KT was talking about, how it's like you do this process long enough, consistently, in 10, 15 years, he says, you'll be like a wizard, right? And like, what is a wizard? Well, a wizard, that derives from the word wise, right? And it's somebody who is, one of the definitions is someone who's highly skilled in some activity or something, right? And so it's like, we're becoming wizards and literally casting spells and breaking spells for others.
You
Isn't
know
that
the
awesome?
word, like, like the word drunkard?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that guy's a drunkard. Like a wizard is a wizard.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly. That's exactly.
That's like your skill.
That's
Yeah.
the ending.
But it
of
makes
the
sense
sub.
because how are people trapped in a spell and hypnotized and so forth? How do you put someone under hypnosis?
You just speak to them.
You just like saying words,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so, and generally within society, everyone has a certain vocabulary. They respond to information and then they act accordingly, and then they justify their limitations with words, with beliefs, and so forth, right? So it's not even it's kind of like casting a spell. It's like, it's not metaphorical.
No, it's literally.
Actually, if you wanted to, I don't know why my thing is speaking so much. If you wanted to direct society, you would just speak. And it wouldn't be that you only literally just speak out of your mouth. You would put information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that information, it could be in music, it could be in fashion, it could be in magazine covers, it could be everywhere, but it would shape people's perception of things and how they think about things and how they see themselves in relation to other people and to society and so forth. And then you would also limit their ability to learn, for lack of a better term, new vocabulary sets.
Yeah.
Which would be like a new way of looking at something or doing something. Like, how many people are in a job where if they lost their job today, they couldn't immediately just do something different fundamentally.
A lot of people.
I mean, clearly, right?
Yeah.
So you're trapping them in a vocabulary set and they don't know how to change that. So that's like being under a spell in a sense.
Yep.
But generally speaking, everybody is under a spell. Actually, that book I've been reading, that Zone 23, right? They talk about how the way the way they phrase it is like you bought into the story. So they're always arguing with each other of like, well, you're just buying into the story, right? Of
You're
what you think
brainwashed.
reality is or history or whatever it is, right? So it's the same thing. You've been told a story and you tell yourself a story. And I remember when I was in college, when I started to question myself and my reality, it was when I became aware that I was telling myself a story in my head about my life and constantly like editing it and like adding to it and analyzing it. And I was like, wait a second, what am I doing? You know, it was like that moment of self-awareness of like, oh shit, I'm like creating a story for myself and I'm trying to figure out who I am based on the story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah.
this and this happened. That's who I am. It's like, no, that's just the story you're telling yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Like self-honesty in action right there. Then you
Yeah,
get
it was
to-
like the kind of the first moment of that in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, that was me when I saw Zeitgeist the first time. That fucked me up so much. Oh man, because they're like going into religion and all that, and I like grew up going to church. I was like, well, even if the church is wrong, like they think there's still like some benevolent God out there, and they just like demolish that belief. I was like, oh man. But then that was when I really started to wake up, and you can see how like there's a spell, many spells you could say, like cast on everybody. But then I started to see that and I was like, okay, well, it's like how do you play in the game though? Because I was basically just at effect and basically stayed at effect until I found you guys. But yeah.
Man.
What I think would make sense for this podcast, because if I can encapsulate the theme, it's like, so long as whatever you're following isn't in consideration of all the parts of reality, you're going to end up creating consequences that aren't best for yourself and everybody around you. And I remember explaining this point, right? So basically, everything that's not real is going to fall. Remember we were talking about that before?
Yeah.
It's like, so long as you're not considering, an example that I have is, you know, you have the toaster, right? And you have the lever that you push down to put the toast down, right?
Mhm.
And you also have the knob or the buttons to control, you know, the number, the setting. For if you set it to 6, it gets like burnt. If you set it to 1, it gets like really under toasted. It's like, imagine you weren't even considering the knob to adjust the settings. So you're like, okay, I put the toast in, I push the lever down, pops up, it's burnt. You're like, what the heck? So then you do it again and you keep burning all these toasts and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I'm never going to eat. And you're like, I can figure it out. Nobody tell me. Nobody tell me. Nobody tell me.
Or you just accept eating burnt ass toast.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get brainwashed by other people who try to tell me how the toaster is.
Or you
So I'm
start
gonna
doing
listen to
your
myself.
toast mantra.
Exactly.
Like praying to the toast
Come
god.
out gold. Come out gold. Come on, toast. Toast always comes out gold for me. Toast is always gold for me. No
I am
matter
one
what.
with the toast.
I always make the best toast. You put the toast down, so it comes out burnt again. It's because you're not considering all parts of the toaster. There's an extra part that you're just not developing your understanding. You're not questioning anything. What am I doing wrong? You're not willing to take advice or whatever the case may be. It's different for everybody, right? But it's like, if you take that into consideration, then things will start working in your life. But what do we all try to do? Right? And we all have to face that point of, Bernard talks about it as the 10 plagues, right? I call it the poke, flick, slap of reality. So basically, reality, if you're not taking everything into consideration, Jess, you're loving that, eh?
Is that from a specific audio or one of the blogs?
The poke flick slap.
No, not that. The plagues.
Okay. the plagues, we listened to that together.
It's the
at some
fear
point.
one, right? Yeah.
I think
It's
Yeah.
on Equaf. Yeah, it's an Equaf.
Is it on
The
equal?
one about
Yeah.
It's the one about
Guys,
it's the one about
you're
fear. I
inequality.
think it's
Okay,
fear.
I heard one. I heard
I
one
think
on
so, yeah.
YouTube from the Nard Dog.
It might be on YouTube as well, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So from Bernie and Bernard, and yeah, he he says it as there'll be like levels of plague that you'll have to face. But if you don't have the vocabulary, if you don't have that awareness, you won't consider it how we're considering it. But yeah, in terms of the poke, flick, slap, that was really just me and Kian reflecting on our fucked up lives. And I'm like, dude, we got to do something before like we get the. So I made a video about this, and I had some people reach out of like, and I got on the phone with them like, yeah, what made you want to reach out? They're like, I watched your video on teachability, and like, I don't want to wait for the slap. I'm like, that's good. That's really good. You're very smart, because what I classified it as, anyways, what I classified as is the poke is like, hey, you didn't get the result you wanted. Okay, so fix it now. If you don't change, then it'll give you something where you experience the effect of whatever it is you're not considering. Maybe you get a little sick or something like that, right? Or you get into a little fight, but you're fine, right? You heal. But the slap is when you experience a consequence that you have to live the rest of your life with. And that's sometimes when people wake up. But basically, the more you put everything into question, the less bullshit you have to go through, or the less quote unquote bad things have to happen to you in order for you to wake up. If you just put everything into question all the time. Now, what are we seeing in the world? We didn't question the system forever. Everybody, no matter what school of thought you go down, it always gets to this certain point and it stops, where nobody's like, we have to change the system. Everyone's saying we have to, this is a funny thing I've been hearing recently, Melat saw it too. People say, yeah, stop referring to China as communist. That's not communist. They're saying it's state capitalism. I forget what CCP stands for, but whatever. If you put the means of productions into the hand of the community, there's still going to be redneck racist hillbillies in that community. So how do you make sure they don't manage things?
Well, of course, the communist re-education camps.
Right. Not communist. I mean state capitalist re-education camp.
No, I'm saying in the point where you're talking about if it's communist, right?
Right.
So this is how you fix it. You just put everybody in concentration camps. That's probably what they're thinking.
So it's like, the point is literally the natural course is, okay, there are people who are uneducated. They do not recognize that we're all inherently equal. So everyone should be provided for. So if you don't change that point, and then you put the means of production and the dispersion of resources into the hands of the people, they're going to end up creating the exact same fucking system where they're like, yeah, I'm not smart enough to handle that stuff. All the people who vote, but like don't really know what they're voting for. They just always vote. It's like, yeah, let them handle it. So if you put it in the hands of the people, that's what we do. That's why nobody's in politics right now. Right. So the point being that all that's going to happen is they're going to say, let the smart people handle it. And what's the starting point of a fucking
They're already doing that. It's called Amazon.
Look
it's
out
called
for
Microsoft.
yourself. Right, exactly. Look out for yourself. Look out for your family. So they're going to manipulate things where the average person cannot see it because they're not educated. And you're going to wind up with state capitalism.
Right. It's going to become exactly that. Yeah.
So
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Make a point.
Well, I was looking at this point a couple days ago about the difference between anarchy versus communism. I was like,
okay,
I wanted to see what clearly was people mean that's the difference, right? Because you see so much similarity with people who are on both sides.
Class war and okay.
And what was interesting is in communism, what they're saying is that the purpose of the government is to, in a sense, redistribute everything to the worker. So there's no more capitalist. And so everything's redistributed to the worker, and then that will create the equality. Eventually, you won't need the government. You won't need the state anymore. So the state's function is to take the capitalists and redistribute everything to the workers. And then eventually the state will go away. Okay. But with anarchy, you don't even need the state to do that. That's the idea. You don't need the state. You just want nothing.
So wait, hold
right?
on. Just one clarification is you're saying that once the government does that, it's a one in capitalism, it's a one-time thing and then it's done?
Meaning the whole point of government is to
Redistribute
enable
resources.
the redistribution, because then that'll be ideal, and then it'll just be like obsolete at that point.
Okay.
That's the theory, right?
And that's
Which doesn't-
why the government of China has gone away.
Right. Well, it's like it doesn't take into account, even if we're not being snarky about it, it doesn't take into account the fact that people are not equally effectively educated.
Right.
So having everyone be workers, the working class, it's like, well, if there was no Jeff Bezos, there wouldn't be any Amazon workers.
Right.
And if Jeff Bezos wasn't, it's like what drove him and is driving him is more influence, more money. And I'm not saying he's doing it just for the paycheck, but I'm saying it's the ability to create more and more and more and more. He's not, because at a certain point you have a certain lifestyle. Having more money isn't really going to change your lifestyle much at a certain point. Like fun, it's like you can spend $1 billion a day. Like really, I mean, not on yourself. You're going to be spending on things that are affecting other people primarily at that level, right? So he's doing it because he's a capitalist, if that makes sense. I'm not justifying capitalism. I'm just saying there wouldn't be Amazon workers if there was no capitalist Jeff Bezos. And so if the whole point of the government is to come in and take all of his resources and redistribute them to everybody, who runs Amazon? So there wouldn't be any more workers. So why? Because the workers wouldn't be workers if they had the same vocabulary as Jeff Bezos. So the only way to get rid of the Jeff Bezos is to make everybody equally effective as Jeff Bezos. Because then guess what? The purpose of government then would be totally different. So it's actually, if you think about it, totally in reverse.
Or try to ensure that Jeff Bezos people can't be produced. Like everyone can no longer, but you'll never be able to control that in totality. And what I'm talking about is like just the opposite of that. Just bring everybody down, right? So
no, yeah, you absolutely can't, because it's still based on genetic lottery, and there'll still be somebody who's really fucking smart.
Yeah.
Because that's how evolution works at this moment.
Yeah, but then you just medicate them
at this moment,
make them have no self-esteem, no confidence, and they'll end
But
up.
hold on, who's doing that medicating?
Yeah. There's still an elite.
Somebody has to still be doing that, which means there will be somebody who's still at the top. So there's no way in which you can. The only way to do it is to educate everybody effectively and create a system for that, because the reason why capitalism doesn't work is because there's so many people who are uneducated. Mm-hmm. Otherwise it would work. The same reason communism can't work is because people are uneducated. So people are not going to be able to suddenly become self-leaders and everybody just make sure everything is distributed effectively.
So the point being, it's just like, they're like, oh, we keep losing at, I don't know, this sport, this game. And this is not the perfect analogy, but if you take the concept from it, this is what I see it is. It's like, okay, I don't want to play soccer anymore. Let's play basketball. Then they're going to keep losing at that game. They're like, fuck that, let's play football. It's like, you're not addressing the fact that you suck at sports. You see what I'm saying? It's like, so going back to the original point is, right now, we've talked about this before. You listen to David Icke, you listen to Bruce Lipton, you listen to, I don't know, everybody. And now that, because I like developed the education of really investigating all the points that Cameron, you've been sharing for like a decade, like forever, right? And much beyond, basically where you're guiding people, hey, check out this, check out that, check out this, check out that. It's like, oh, it's so obvious that we have to go one layer deeper than everybody else is willing to go. We can't just keep changing the system outside of us. We have to change the system inside of us. No one's going to the point of, no one's going beyond this fundamental point where you question the axioms, you question the principles, right? And because of that, that's where we're going to keep experiencing consequences. Now we're at a point in time where it's like, it's getting to that point where it's almost slap time, where there's going to be it actually already is.
Yeah,
It actually already is, because
We need that shirt, by the way.
What
It's
was that,
slap
Mitch?
time.
It's slap time.
what was that, Mitchell?
I think it already has happened. Like there are
Right.
consequences that people will live with for the rest of their life.
They're just waiting for the back slap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring it
Coming back.
And then the curb stomp.
That's what we need. We need a slap that's coming back, and it says "Turn the other cheek, bitch."
That's
And so
limited edition.
what I
Only-
see with that is like all the children who are being born now are going to be so much more fucked than we were. Like you think about all the kids. Yeah, I'm sure everyone has thought this. Anybody listening to this is like, oh my God, all these kids who are getting phones at like fucking 13 years old and watching TikTok and all that stuff. That sucks. But imagine doing that all. Plus, you can't touch anybody. You can't see anybody. You have to wear a mask. Nobody has faces anymore. Like all that stuff. It's like the consequences of that is going to be something that is very difficult, or it'll be a lot more to work through. Right. So and here's the funny part. Okay. And this is what I'll bring it for all of us. How we all just said that was the slap, right?
Yeah.
It's never the slap.
Right. It's never the
always
slap you
the
think.
degree before.
Yeah.
Like this is the flick. We got poked a couple times, right?
The
But now
fact that
it's like-
everyone's starting to talk about it, but they're not changing. Like, no.
That's the flick. But eventually it's going to be like what Jess said. If we don't stop things, it's going to be a very, it's not just going to be a software point where they're educating everybody to be messed up. It's going to be like everybody's smoking weed all the time. Everybody's doing drugs. Everybody's on ADD, ADHD. Everyone's on Neuralink. Like everyone is suppressed. And that's like there's just
It's
going
harder
be
to change at that point.
exactly.
Oh, that's
Much
like
harder.
the hardest point to change. That's when the most control is in place, like giving you the incentive to not change.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the point to consider is whoever listening to this, okay? The people that you want to change, the inertia or the amount of force that that person has to put into changing the point that they need to change is equal to the inertia that you have to overcome to get to your next level that
Say
you're
that
not
again.
currently. So basically we all project, right? We're all like, man, if these people just woke up, if this person just changed, if my mom just changed, if my girlfriend just changed, if my boyfriend just changed, if whatever, right? Why aren't they blank? Because they're not willing to give up this habit, this automated program. The amount of energy or focus or effort that it requires for them to realize that point is equal to the amount of energy or focus or effort required for you to overcome your next step. Where are you just still not looking at the consequences in your life? Where are you still just being entertained and just numbing your mind because you hate studying, because you hate school? Whatever amount of focus and effort it takes for you to overcome that point, that's what you're praying for other people to do.
Mhm.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point of like, because I remember I used to have those thoughts of if this other person would just change, if they would do this, or if these things happened, that would make my life so much easier. And like, oh, I would be living the life if
Right.
if I had this, if this money would come or whatever it was, right? And it was always just like something out there had to change in order for, because I was fine, like life would be perfect if those things out there would change and then I'd have everything, right? But then it's funny because it's like, it's actually super delusional,
Mm.
super delusional to have that starting point of those things out there have to change in order for me to change. It's the same thing as like, I don't know if you guys will be able to, well, you guys will be able to follow me with this, but like, it's the same thing as saying you learn to read through context, right? And it's like, that doesn't make sense. Or like, what was it? John Goodman? Is that, or Ken Goodman? Ken Goodman was the guy who was saying like, good readers, they don't learn to read through like recognizing the words. They're learning through context. They're just using the words around those words. They don't know what those words are, right? But like, if you actually do that, it's like, then how are you supposed to ever actually know anything? Because you don't have any of those words built in. You don't recognize any of those words. So how are you supposed to make the jump to context? But on the other hand, if you have all of those words built in, then you can create the context of everything else around it, right? You can see it really clearly. Rather, you can go
Well, having new words is context. Like, think about it. Like, if we're sitting and having a conversation and I'm like, oh, that's sick, and your only context for that word is like literally someone's ill, you're probably like, but someone else is like, oh yeah, and you're like, why is everybody like happy about that? And you're like, you don't have that context.
Right.
So if you're trying to use the context to understand the word, it's like you're confused.
Right.
So you need to be able to understand the word itself and all the meanings of the words. And now you have more context in that situation. You can interpret it more effectively. That's not where you can sort of learn some things that way,
right?
But it's not systematic.
Right.
And ultimately what happens for most people is they get confused, because if in reality you could ultimately learn in the best way through context, everybody would already know everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Because all the context is all around us. It's all here. So how do you not, like, pick up a quantum mechanics book? You don't know addition, you don't know subtraction, you don't know algebra, and just learn it through context.
So
you're going to be like, oh, the Hamiltonian operator. Yes, I understand what this is from the context. Yes. You don't even fucking know what an operator is. You know what I'm saying? You'd have no fucking clue what's going on. You'll be totally lost.
But that is how at least the schools that I went to, I remember there were specific lessons where they were like, okay, here's a word. Just guess what you think it is based on literally the words around it or how it sounds. And so you'd be like, I remember very specifically, you'd read a word and they'd be like, does that sound negative or positive? Just based on like how the word sounds.
It's
and
true.
then
the word is neutral and you're like,
yeah, it does sound negative. It sounds really negative.
Yeah, neutral sounds negative.
yeah. That's basically how
sounds
they
like neuter.
us.
It sounds like neuter. Yeah, definitely a bad thing.
Yeah. Definitely. Yep. But like, and then they expect you to learn that way. It's kind of like you were saying on the call we had previously, of like, they're trying to teach kids to read by, this is how you teach them how to ride a bike. That was a really good analogy. Could you say that again?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We were talking about the point of memorizing things versus the process of integrating piece by piece, like the symbolic aspect of something. And then, like, for example, the way we taught Max to read, we haven't taught him to read. We've helped him integrate vocabulary. He can recognize the stuff on the page. He has a lot of definitions for the words. When he reads it, it makes sense. Or it doesn't, which means he doesn't have all the definitions and context. But we don't give him a book that he doesn't have any understanding of and expect him to learn to read from that, right? And so I was just describing the process of how they take you to do, how they teach you in school versus how we're doing it with Max and Seneca. Would be like, if in school, if they were to teach you how to ride a bike, the way they would do it would be like, okay, here's the pedals, here's the wheels, here's the thing, here's what let me describe to you what you do. Okay, now tomorrow you have a test and you have to be able to ride a bike. And you'd be like, what the fuck? And you just sitting there cramming, like, okay, the pedal's that part. Okay, cool, I know what that is. And then you're on the test, and literally the test is you're just telling how to ride a bike. I didn't even explain that part, but that's really how they would test you. It wouldn't even be if you could ride a bike. But then they're like, yep, now you know how to ride. You know how to ride a bike now.
Yeah.
No, I can
Next
describe
lesson.
some random shit that I memorized about how to ride. I can't actually ride a bike.
No,
Next
you have
lesson.
your bachelor's in bike riding.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you've literally
teach
never ridden a
others.
bike. But they
Go
can give you
teach
all the
others how to ride the
analysis.
bike. You're now
Right.
qualified to teach other people.
It's so funny, like business, you like take a class in business or economics or entrepreneurship, and it's like, what, it's a professor teaching it. Like,
Dude, I took classes in entrepreneurship. I remember, and I was like, I remember because I'd just come back from California, seeing Joel Bauer firsthand and
Nice.
talking with him, and he was like talking about marketing and all this shit. And I was like, oh, this guy knows. Like, this guy really. And I remember during my professor's hours, just going into their office and saying, okay, here's what we're learning, but here's what this person who makes a ton of money doing this said.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, but that's not actually practical. I'm like, but he's actually doing it. And they're like, yeah, but we're just going to do what's in the textbook. And I was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I gotta get the fuck out of here. This is not it.
That was Drake's poke moment, and he
Right.
I got it.
You're like,
that
okay.
person really knew all that shit. Why would they be taking a tenured position?
Exactly.
You know, and I mean that could I could see like a case where it's like somebody who's really successful does a lecture series or something because they're
Right.
sharing stuff. That I could see value in something like that, you know. But generally speaking, taking a course in entrepreneurship, it's like you learn entrepreneurship by having the vocabulary of something you're really interested in that you understand and you're trying to solve a problem, and then you go try to do it and you figure out a bunch of shit that no one understands already. Otherwise there'd be no market for what you're doing. Like if it was already solved.
Imagine being so lost, right? That you go to college thinking you're going to take a course in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And thinking that's how that was where I was. It's like,
Yeah.
I was like that clueless where I was like, oh, I don't know what to do.
You're like, the world is too scary. Like, I got to take the safest route. I got to take a course on risk taking, entrepreneurship, right?
yeah,
But
there
that's
it
how
is.
evil that system is, where it's like, we're just going to straight up lie to your face and just going to pretend like, yep. We're teaching you a course on, they're like, just give us your money. We don't give a shit what your result is. They really don't care. They don't care. They're like, we're just selling courses. We don't give a fuck like what the result is.
Wow. I've never thought about like selling courses. Like, you know how everybody makes fun of like the business people who are selling courses and all that stuff?
That's what college
That's
is.
what it is.
They're just capitalizing on what is popular. So
Right.
they're offering courses in it. So
That's
that
why they
people
fucking
think
made
that-
like a Star Trek course or whatever, right? A
Yeah.
university level.
Yeah,
stuff.
you can learn elf language at
What?
University of Wisconsin.
What?
Yeah, like J.R. Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings guy. However you say his name.
Alvin. You can
Oh,
learn Elvish,
Elvin.
like Alvin.
Elvin.
Elvish. Oh, I thought that was like, you're like Elvis impersonating or something.
No, even better. Elvish.
It's
Right.
Elvis on the
You
list.
can, like, take
It's,
courses.
Elvis.
Sean Connery saying Elvis.
I'm going to teach you about Elvish.
That's perfect. Then you could maybe learn how to like cast spells, and then you
Right.
Spells.
Here's the thing. Here's
cool.
like it's so cool that we've built up this context for this, because with what I was saying was learning how to cast spells, like what we're doing, learning how to cast spells. We have the spell book, right? Like not only that, but also like what Asif was saying, as far as if you're just doing, you know, like you're not taking into context or into consideration rather everything of how this world system works or the people around you, what's best for all. If you're not taking all of that into consideration, then you're just a part of the system. You're not actually doing anything. You're not taking responsibility. You're not able to really direct things, right? And it's like we have that spell book, or I think it's called the Enchiridion, right? Of like everything of how our minds work, how this world actually functions, and how physical reality functions. And it's not something that we created, it's something that we can see and it makes sense to us. But imagine, like, just staying with this theme of like spells, right? Imagine getting a spell book and it's in Latin to you, right? It's like you can't even read it. You have no idea what this spell does. Like imagine how like afraid you would be to even just say one of the things, because you have no idea what this is going to create, right?
Because somebody is going to come up to you and be like, it's Leviosa. Not and you'd be
Yeah.
like, fuck, I'm so stupid.
Like, oh, I shouldn't have made it rain. I was trying to make it something
Levitate.
over here. Like, God damn it.
Right. But like that's how I see people like going through the Destiny material. It's a completely different language. It's in English, but it's like for them, it's like the vocabulary that you need, the context that you need to understand all of that. It's like, and that's what we're talking about, is building that within yourself so that you can open that book and go, oh yeah, I see what this is talking about. I can do something about that. I can do that. I can direct that. I can create that. It's like looking at a blueprint and going, I can build that, you know, or a manual or whatever. Whatever.
That's why this podcast is for people who already are in Destiny, have techno tutor, etc. So that's why we always keep saying, like, don't just keep listening to this if you're not doing those points, because if you're not doing those points, you're not going to have the context to apply or understand really what we're talking about, which is like missing the point. Right. So if it seems like, well, why are you guys explaining all of this if you're saying you can't get it just from the context? Is we made a very specific decision that this is to support people who are already really in the group, right? So obviously people are going to come from the outside, be interested, and then want to be a part of it. But that's why we're always directing you to, okay, now go start studying these points, go start building your vocabulary. Here's the tools to do that. Because if you do that, everything we're saying will make sense. It'll just support you to kind of process a little bit more and be like, okay, now I see more clearly. Now I can direct myself more effectively within it.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Consider this your poke, and it will come because you're now aware. Go ahead, Asim.
a big problem that everyone will face if you weren't raised by Cameron and Katie. A big point that everybody will face is rats. Damn it, is
Why don't they have more kids?
Yeah, why don't you guys?
How do I apply for one of these positions to be raised by Cameron and Kate?
Okay, real quick. Show of hands. If you don't have kids, show of hands. Okay, you guys just volunteered. All right. So now you're gonna have kids.
right.
Yeah.
Their kids as living principles is what we do, right?
Our kids will just be like your kids, like sort of older mentors, right?
Right,
Oh
exactly.
yeah.
But Katie and Cameron as like the living word as principles, them having more kids is us having more kids following the same principle.
Right. Yeah. The whole point is not for us to do everything. And I
To
mean,
have,
we
like,
can only
40
do so much in our lifetime anyways. So we know you guys and
Katie's
everybody
body
else
can
who's
only
taken
handle
this
so
on.
many outputs.
Right. But I'm saying you guys will take it even further, obviously. It's not even, huh?
I know someone who has like 15 kids. They're all her biological children with the same
Yeah.
father. Like, it's possible. You can
Oh
do
yeah, for sure.
It's possible
sure.
to give birth to that many children.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're gonna do that, right? Jess?
However, I would
That's what you're
suggest,
saying, right?
We're going
I
to
would,
the.
I would suggest though to only have 2 kids at a time. Right.
Just in
Because
terms
you
of
can't
the
really
amount
give
that
them
you
the
take on.
attention they need
Yeah.
if you have like more than 2. And some people don't even, some people argue with that or react to it, but all they're really doing is having a bunch of kids and then feeding them into the system.
Because
That's all it is.
you guys know that whole thing about the middle child? You guys ever heard that? Like the middle child is always the weird one or whatever? You guys haven't heard that before?
Yeah, I
Maybe
heard
people who have like the siblings, right? But
Yeah.
generally speaking, that happens very often where it's like the middle child is the one that's kind of like the black sheep of the family.
Wow,
but it's-
I'm a middle child.
Well, look at where you
Makes
are.
sense.
No.
Makes sense.
But the point being that it's true what he's saying. That exists as a concept that middle children, generally speaking, can associate with, is because the attention goes to the first one, and then they become self-sufficient, and then the last one because it's like that parent.
the
Generally speaking, exactly, it's the baby of the family, right? So my mom to this day still calls me baby. Sometimes.
I
Right?
call you that too, just not to your face.
Exactly.
That's what I'm thinking
Just
about
when you
you.
talk.
Baby blue, that's what I hear.
Just when you're thinking about it, that's funny. So the big problem that people are going to run into is you don't like studying.
Hmm.
You're going to be like, Cameron, not you,
Say
Cameron.
that again. I like that. Say that again. That's really good.
What is this?
It's a really good point. I just never looked at it in simplicity like that before.
But the truth is, like, maybe you didn't have that issue so much, Cameron, because you were a very studious person, right?
No. I didn't like studying in school.
Studying in school, right? But I'm
That's what
talking
I'm saying.
about,
Like the
Okay.
context of just studying, what people think of it as, like,
right?
because they'll say, "Oh, I hate studying," but the reality is, okay, what if it's Call of Duty for somebody? They'll be like, "Oh yeah, and you got this red dot reticle, blah 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 blah." You know,
Right.
EOTech, they know all the fucking things, right? So I'm like, you studied that.
Uh-huh. That's a great point. And so that's the point to look at is like, but it's just so hard for me to write. Like, I don't like writing. Or like, I don't, it's not enjoyable to do this stuff. Or I had to walk through that too. Right. And, in terms of the depth of investigating everything related to coronavirus or the different political systems and all that different things, it's like, yeah, there's 2 reasons why that's not going to be interesting to you. 2 reasons. Now, the point to consider is, what does study mean? Get clear on that first. But it's basically investigating a particular subject, right? So, yeah, firstly, you're going to look at the Desteni material. You're going to look at Jin. You're going to look, some people, not everybody, but they're going to be like, I don't want to listen to all the audios and read the books and all that stuff. For some people, it's going to be easy with Jin. They're like, oh shit, because the points of sex and money are going to be triggered within you. You're like, oh, I can use this to get that. If that's not clear to you, for example, with the Desteni material, if that's not how it's introduced to you, or even so, it's like Drake was saying, it's a different level of vocabulary. It's not necessarily different words than you've ever heard before. And in a lot of cases it is, but it's giving you another dimension or layer of understanding.
It's like looking at sick versus sick, you know?
Exactly. Perfectly described. It's like people will say subconscious. I used to say that all the fucking time, right? It's like, oh, I got to change your subconscious patterns. It's like, now I know exactly what that means, right? And how it, you know what? I always ask people this when I'm explaining the mind consciousness system. I'm like, did anybody ever differentiate between subconscious and unconscious for you? I've never seen it anywhere. And everyone's like, no, I never really thought about that. I'm like, me neither, right? So the point being, investigating those things, there might be resistance, but it's not, don't assume that it's because it's the material. What does it mean to take 100% responsibility? So there's two reasons why you'll run into that issue with, I don't want to, right? I want to watch that. I want to do other stuff, whatever it is for you. You have to be self-honest about that. But the first reason is because the word study, when what other context were we studying in?
Yeah.
When it made no fucking sense as to why you were doing it. You were just being forced. Because, and by forced, I mean, if you didn't do it, you would face social shame. Your parents would beat you or punish you or abandon you or whatever the case, whatever that threat was for you. It was a very significant threat, enough for you to be like, I don't really know why I have to do it, but I know I got to do it.
So it just became memorization.
Right, exactly.
For the sake of it, not for, or what I mean to say is not to understand what you're actually doing.
That's what study became to us.
Right.
It's like, why am I reading this fucking book from Kurt Vonnegut? I heard he was a sick author, but I mean, like, I'm just doing this to write this paper and I don't even know why I'm writing the paper.
Yeah.
Dude, I remember reading that whole, what was the one? I forget which one it was, but reading the whole thing in school. And then only later as an adult realizing, like learning that it was like a time travel book.
Slaughterhouse
Oh,
5.
I didn't even get any of that when I
think that was Slaughterhouse 5. Right?
Yeah, I think so, right? But it's like, oh, he was time traveling. Oh, okay. What? How do you not fucking get
How did you not get that?
But that's because it's like, how much am I actually paying attention? It's like,
Right.
okay, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I need to write this fucking essay. Okay. Not really paying attention.
Notes.
I didn't even read most of the book. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny because that's like John Taylor Gatto talks about that in in one of his speeches. He talks about how he would give kids this book to read, and then he'd ask them a question that he knew they would not know the answer to because they had learned to game the system. Up until that point, they had learned like, oh, these are the types of questions that would be asked. So I need to know like who's the main character, blah, blah, blah. And he's asking a question about like, what's going on in this situation. And
dude, that's so good, Drake. Like the way they teach kids to read. Because you touched on it a little bit, Asif, but it's like they're just teaching you to game.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're reading.
Cameron, your
like,
story.
Okay, identify the main character, blah, 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 blah. It's like you why don't you just understand it? Like, I mean, I understand why children can't do that. I get that. So in the absence of that, if you had the effective vocabulary, you wouldn't need to be taught how to read.
But that's the point of them teaching you how to read in the same way that they teach you how to ride a bike is like, oh, here are the pedals. Like what
the way
it'll seem like
right.
What?
The way they test comprehension.
Right. Exactly.
Asking really, really specific.
So then they teach you just to go for those things, right?
Yeah.
And then that way later, when you get some report or something about something, you can't read it. You can't understand it. You don't trust yourself.
Apply that as a concept to different things. You just know, okay, what's the conflict?
Doing that doesn't give you understanding.
Right.
So it's like, it only allows you to pass the test or whatever if the test is asking you those questions, but it doesn't actually give you real understanding.
But the thing is, it's not only in like AR tests or tests at the end of the year, things like that. We had these like yearly big exams that were for like standardized testing, where it would judge like each different like math, reading, all those different things. And that's exactly what they would do. For the reading portion, they would give you a passage and then they would ask you questions for your comprehension. They would take the school's score collectively per level, and then they would compare it to other schools and then other states. And that would be your rank. And if your school did good enough, like you would get praised, you would get this
Pizza
reward.
parties.
Yeah.
Yeah, like whatever it was. And like that's crazy. We're literally seeing how well kids are doing in school and making it a competition with other grades, with other schools, with other states, based on comprehending and answering specific questions that is repetitive in every single thing. And it's not actually understanding what I just read. You just know the exact questions they're going to ask, and you could even go ahead, read the questions ahead of time, and then just go find it in the passage and then be done and not even know anything.
Right,
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely.
Know nothing about what you just read.
That's
Jessica,
number one.
that's such a good point. That's such a good point, because it's like, oh, so you're telling me there's like a system that's like, influencing everyone. It's like, yeah, that's it. Because like in my schools, and I'm sure the same was like in your schools as well, but in my schools, they were teaching you to pass that standardized test. Like a big majority of what you did in class was, hey, you're going to have the FCAT coming up. And so you better study for this. And so we got to learn these things so we can all do well in the FCAT. And that was all that our classes were focused on. Right. And so it's like, because the incentive was so big for those schools, that was heavily influencing. And they knew, okay, these are the kinds of questions will be on there. It's like, yes, you can just put out an agenda of, we're going to put out this standardized test and everyone will teach to it. And it will allow us to control the curriculum, because that's what is what your school's funding is dependent on.
Exactly.
Really great point.
But what as a tutor, I would always get these parents like, your kids needing help with like the SAT, right? I know they don't have SAT in Canada, right? But it's like sort of like these tests you take to qualify for different colleges. So the better you do, the more competitive a college you can get entrance into, generally speaking. And people, they'd be like, well, what do you need help with? It's like, well, they just need help with the reading comprehension. For some reason, they do poorly in that. And it was so funny because back then I would just be like, I can't really help you with that, because you just need to read more and like learn how to read. It's like I could teach you the tricks and tips, but I never liked doing that as a tutor. Like, that's why I always liked teaching math and science, but primarily math, because you could actually explain it and go to the root of it and really explain like how to add fractions together and why it works and so forth, versus teaching someone like prior to having TechnoTutor, teaching them to read a passage of information that they've never read before and answer questions about it, but they actually don't know how to read effectively. It'd be like trying to teach someone how to add and multiply fractions, but never actually explaining what a fraction really is and never really having them understand like the different numbers and how to add and stuff like that. It's just like, okay, look, when you see these numbers, if they have ones, it's going to be this number. You're trying to memorize all that instead of like actually just understanding what you do. So no matter what, you understand how to do it. And it was so funny because it's like I would have the student read it and then read the question, right? And then I'd be like, okay, so now before you answer it, what is it asking you? You know what they would do? They'd go, hold on, let me look. And I'm like, didn't you just fucking read it? It's like, well, now I need to understand what it was asking me. So they would read it. They wouldn't even understand it. They would read the question. They wouldn't understand the question. And then they would say like, I don't understand how to do this one. Can you help me with this one? I'd be like, okay, well, what is it asking you? I'm not sure. It's like, why are you asking for my help? Well, you didn't even, I know I'm kind of asking these rhetorical questions because that's how I felt back then. You know what I mean? Of like, because to me, it's like, okay, I want to understand it. Let me read it. And back then I would always tell my students, and this would help to a certain degree, but I would say, okay, so now this time I want you to read the passage. But when you read it this time, I want you to read it as if you were trying to understand what it's saying. Okay. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And then they would read it and they would get more. Right?
What?
But do you see how
100%.
that's the same thing that Drake talked about earlier? It's
What do you
like
mean?
an external dependency complex where they aren't even structured internally to even understand, comprehend anything the first time they read it, where
Yeah.
they're dependent on you. They're like,
Yeah.
"Cameron, you gotta walk me through this. The teacher
Right,
has
well,
to walk me
yeah.
through this. I can't
They're
even-"
like, if I just move my eyes and then I get to the end, I read it.
I make the
But I'm like,
sound.
but if you were actually trying to understand it, what would you do? They'd be like, oh, okay. And they'd read, be like, okay. And they'd understand a little bit more. They
Yeah.
wouldn't be 100%, but it would be more because they actually tried to understand it. Because that was the best I could do back then, was just telling them the problem primarily at this stage. Because back then I was like, I don't know how to teach you how to read better other than telling you to read more stuff, which is exactly what it says in the reading research.
Yeah.
That's their conundrum. They're like, we don't know how to get kids to read more outside of their vocabulary because they don't have the vocabulary. But the only way we know how to get them to be exposed to new vocabulary is to read stuff outside of their vocabulary. So it's like, what do you do? And it's like, with our kids, we just give them the vocabulary. That's that simple.
Right.
Well, but what if you're not in that natural state anymore where you just absorb? Well, Technotutor works. I won't go into detail about it, but it works even if you're not in that stage anymore. That's why I use it.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I've been able to increase my vocabulary and so forth. But my point is, back then I didn't have all that context. So it was very frustrating. And I never wanted to tutor reading comprehension because it was just like, I know that the student, if they're having that problem, they're not already effective readers. So
Right.
for me to help them, I would have to get them to memorize a bunch of patterns and like techniques. And I'm like, they're not gonna be able to do it, because if they're not even already seeing that for themselves, they're not gonna be able to do it. So it's way easier to tutor math than it was to tutor reading comprehension. The fact that you even calling it a subject, reading comprehension,
Yeah.
like that'd be like if I was like, okay, guys, today I'm going to teach you a course on conversational comprehension. So when you're having a conversation with someone, I'm going to teach you how to understand what they're saying and how to respond.
Oh, great. I've been looking for this course because I have
Yeah.
no
Okay.
idea.
Okay. So first step.
I have
first step.
conversations all the time, but I don't know
There's
what's
gotta
being
be a
said,
better
and
way.
I don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
Okay. So first step I'm going to teach you is, okay, when they're talking, okay, I want you to identify who's the subject, who's the speaker.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And who are they speaking to?
Hey, hang on. I got to take notes. I got
Okay.
to take notes.
And then also I want you to notice, what is the tone of their speech? Okay,
Can you
because
just
that's
tell
going to
me
give you
what
some
you
clues as to whether they're maybe angry at you, whether they're sad, whether they're friendly. Okay. And I also want you to think, while they're talking, is this a persuasive conversation or is this an informative conversation? Are they just informing you of something? Or is it expository? Is it just, they're just entertaining you with their regaling you with stories of old, like, and you're like, you already do that automatically when you're fucking talking to somebody.
Right.
So why can't you do it with vocab when you're reading? Because when you're reading, that's a physical, you have to have the words physically integrated for your perceptual senses to fucking process what's on that page.
Here's the thing. It's like, how many times have you spoken to somebody and you're like painting the context that gives the concept of what they need to know in order to get to the next stage? And then they're like, oh, and they're not thinking at all about how it actually applies to their life. Right? All of us, we've listened to that stuff. We're like, oh man, those people who just listen to stuff and don't actually apply are so stupid. Like, they're so stupid, man. And then you're like, all right, I'm gonna go play video games. Like,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, they're actually equal. You can read something and be like, the person who's reading this book is wasting their time and you should stop reading right now and just go start like doing stuff. And you'd be like, oh, this is an amazing book. I'm going to keep reading. Right? It's like, you're like, wow, I'm just not going to actually take in that information and go use it. You're just reading. It's like this specific thing where reading doesn't actually have to do with comprehend, like understanding and moving forward. The funny thing is, it happens in our conversation where it's like, you have the people who are listening. Yeah. Oh yeah. Let me tell you what I want to tell you though. Right. Yeah. I'm listening. But let me tell you what I want to tell you. It's like, okay, now I want you to try listening, but I want you to try listening and try to listen like you want to understand what they're saying. Oh, okay. Like, imagine applying that
And
same.
suddenly, like, your relationships improve and everything.
Right.
It's like,
Like, wait, you've been trying to tell me something the whole time. Wow. Okay.
Also, though, to add to the point too, the reason why you will experience some of your conversations, like it's just you understand each other and so forth, is because they're at the same vocabulary level as you. They're talking about stuff you already know. If you were to sit down and try to have a conversation, like an hour-long conversation with Jeff Bezos, you see what I mean? Like the average person sitting there, they'd probably be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Because he'd be talking about, assuming that he could talk about whatever he wants, right? He'd be talking about stuff that you just wouldn't understand.
He'd be talking in the future. Like you guys remember that 60 Minutes interview that he did? Or
I haven't seen that, no.
okay, well,
I might have seen clips of it, but yeah.
Yeah. Like from long
where
ago.
he talks about going to Norway and all that.
No, like long ago, like from the 90s, I mean, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think it was 60 Minutes. I don't know. But in the 90s, they were interviewing him. He was just starting, or Amazon was just basically starting to get big, right? And he was talking about fucking monitoring the mouse movements when you visit Amazon's website, which is something that nobody else was talking about back then. But he was like, yeah, we want to see how their mouse moves across the screen and like what they're hovering over. And then maybe we can use that to change our website a little bit so we can help them more, find the things that they're looking for, things that they're more willing to purchase. And it's like, dude, he was doing
like
that
Jeff
in the
Bezos
90s.
experiments on mice. And you're like, no.
Mice movement. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. Considering all the context that we just painted of the experience that we go through school, what we learn reading to be, all of that bullshit that meant absolutely nothing to us, that we just learned is completely irrelevant. You just do it to get some really specific result that doesn't indicate anything for the rest of your life about like whether you're actually smart or not, or whether you can get results in relationships or business or money or anything. That's what we put into the word study. That's what study means to us. So when we go to study the gin material, right? And maybe some people have a natural affinity with the gin material because of the way Kevin specifically designed the way he speaks to appeal to all of us idiots who wouldn't listen otherwise.
Yeah.
You guys see that?
He knows how to speak to people where they're at. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Now, that wasn't the purpose of Desteni.
No.
The purpose of Desteni is like, we don't have time. We have to lay all of it out as much as possible, as crudely as possible. Bernard will be like on his computer. You'll hear like, and this, and you'll hear just like click, click, and he's just doing his thing. He'll be like driving and he'll be making an audio and all that stuff. He's just putting it out there.
Yeah, they're not like, okay, let's book studio time and
right,
like all
exactly.
This other shit. Yeah.
Get a podcast mic and like, right. Just like,
but also that's why it's like now we're doing this part.
Right, exactly.
Right. So, but that doesn't mean you should study what we're saying only. You should really go back to the point and do EQuaff and Bernard's audios and DIP and so forth. And this is more like supplemental on top of that. And this is more of the, now you want to do something in the world. Okay. That's what this is about, what we're doing. Now we're gathering people to say, let's go actually do something in the world. Still, you have to do all this other stuff. It's your internal process, but now we're going to do something in the world and you're going to have to get up to speed.
It's kind of like there's all these scholars who like they study these ancient texts or whatever, right? And then they rewrite it for you, and it's like, and then you read their revision of it, and you're like, oh yeah, I get that concept. It's like we're saying, okay, look, we rewrote it for you, but also go back and look at the original text. Go back and look at the listen to the original audios and hear the crudeness and see it for yourself, and then basically understand it. Like go understand it. But also we're giving the tools of how to then understand it, right?
Well, exactly. Because like, if I didn't have TechnoTutor, there's no freaking way I'd be able to comprehend listening to an audio like Revenge of the Ego or Resident Seed or something.
Yeah.
But with the tools, and earlier too, Drake, going off your analogy of like getting that book of spells, how like we have the book of spells. But it's beyond that. We also have the mechanism by which to get the spells to work. Because has anyone here ever tried to sit down and just like read a dictionary, for example? You're like, this is fucking boring. This sucks, and you quit after like a page.
Couldn't understand the context.
Yeah, and like nothing can fit in.
Imagine someone trying to read a dictionary and get all the information from context.
Yeah.
You're looking
So
at the other
this
words
word
around and
says-
you're like,
This word says cat, but this word says cathedral.
somehow they're related. But literally, that's the place that actually has the actual meaning of everything.
Right, but that doesn't matter. Just do context, right? So it's like that's what this is about, is giving the context for how to perfect yourself and then come together and be part of a group to actually go into the system and change things. But you have to do it simultaneously, and you have to look at your own process of like, listen to this podcast, apply it for yourself, use the tools, and then go back to those original audios, or go venture around on Equoff, listen to the stuff, and then put it back in TechnoTutor, like write about it, take it on for yourself. And then the way that you know that you're actually learning, rather than getting an A or a D or a C or whatever fucking grade, it's not about grades. It's what's in my bank account and what are my relationships and what does my schedule look like on the average week? And do I abide by what I say I'm going to do? And then eventually, like when you have kids, like that's the result too. Like there's no fucking grade. No one's here to say, okay, well, yeah, you should have done it this way or that way. It's like this is like the university of life, basically. And that's like, this is where it actually matters.
So
Have you guys noticed how, as you use your TechnoTutor, the things that you would have resistance to understanding or accepting, if that makes sense, that resistance goes away? And I don't mean accepting in the sense of like you're accepting even though it doesn't make sense. I just mean before you might have a resistance to even though you could see something is true, you still don't want to accept it. What are you gonna say, Drake?
Okay, so it's really cool because you're saying like what you're willing to accept, or you like when you use your TechnoTutor, you're able to accept these things more easily, right? It's because your teachability goes up, right? But it's so cool because Asif did a hangout 2 weeks ago on teachability. I guess that's just a week ago now, right? But on teachability, and what are the two components of teachability? What is your willingness to learn, and what is your willingness to accept change, right? But the funny thing is, I think a lot of people overlook that word willingness, right? Because what do you think willingness means? Like, what's the average person going to say for what is willingness? What do you say, Asif?
Like your desire.
Yeah, motivation.
What do you want?
Yeah,
Right.
but also for me, attached to that is all of the old movies where it explains this person has so much will to do this thing, and it's like painful and hard and like a bad experience.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Look up the word willingness, right? Look up the word willingness and you'll find it just means how prepared are you? Like your preparedness, you're being prepared to do this, right? And so even if you have a strong desire to do something, if you are not prepared to actually take in that information, meaning you don't have the vocabulary, you don't have the understanding, you've never done any of this stuff, right? You can't do it. You have a low willingness. Sorry. Even though you really fucking want to. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Damn.
That's what a lot of people
Yeah.
completely miss. They completely miss the boat on that, right?
The ultimate willingness is using TechnoTutor.
Well, yeah, it's because like Cam was saying, like I've noticed that within myself for sure, of you just build in enough vocabulary and then it's like, yeah, you like Drake, you're saying you're prepared. You have that willingness to then go and look at maybe certain videos on YouTube or have conversations with people, or like I'll sit down with my accountant, for example, and be like, hey, show me what you're doing. How do you actually fill out this form? Okay, what is it? K1? Okay, explain that to me. Where in the past I'd be like, fuck that shit. This is why I pay your money. You do it. QuickBooks, you handle that. But I'm like, no, like how do I actually dig around in QuickBooks and like give myself like the balance sheet and okay, on with these dates and all that? Because I'm like, this is fun because this is actually knowing the score, because now that then even builds on the willingness, because now I'm even more prepared. So when I go out and someone brings something up to me, I say, okay, I can't do that this month, but next month when I have the cash flow, I can do that. So it's like the willingness actually builds on itself. And then you keep going. Because then now I'll use TechnoTutor and I'll go back to some basics or some list I did like a year ago, and I'll go back through it. I'll be like, whoa, I did not pick up that definition that one time. And then you
Right.
like go back through and then you make more. And it's like, you hit a certain point, you're like, I'm fucking unstoppable. But like, I actually know it.
Yeah.
And there's still ways to go. But that's straight up being a wizard.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also that point of like, look, it's the concept itself of being teachable. And then you're not even teachable on what the words are, but then like what's actually being said.
Or it's like,
want to learn about what
yeah,
teachability is.
I'll do TechnoTuter later, like, and they give an excuse like I don't have the money or whatever. It's like, isn't that step one of teachability? I'll just listen to the Gin audios for free, where I can find them like on YouTube or like some hidden website, right? Like, miss the whole fucking point.
Right. So, Mitch, you made a good point of like, how do you measure it, right? And I just wanted to clarify one point, because you mentioned the money in your bank account, and one of them was the relationships you have. And to clarify that point, it's like, what influence are you having on people? What measurable influence are you having on people? And the other part of that, what you said right before that, is listen to this podcast, apply it for yourself, and go study the other things. One way, here's an example of applying this podcast to yourself. We just gave a bunch of context about how the word study and learn inside of you is totally fucked up. Like totally fucked up. Stop the podcast. Like, just do it after, whatever. Put it in your schedule. Take apart those words.
Or build those words.
Exactly. Right? Look at the memories within that. Go to basics 1.1 and look at whatever memories come up with that word, and do the self-forgiveness on it to let go of whatever you were like, the decisions that you made about what learning is. The decisions.
One thing I would suggest to do to make it easy on yourself is, if you have TechnoTutor, just put the word study in a circle in the middle of a piece of paper, and then just draw little branches and put every word that comes up, like whether it's an emotion, if it's like a memory, just put like a word to it, like math class, like whatever it is, right? And then just keep doing that, and you'll get a whole bunch of words on a piece of paper. And then if you have TechnoTutor, you can go put them into your TechnoTutor and process it that way. And then also do the stuff that Asif is suggesting with it. That will supercharge the whole thing.
Yeah, that's my favorite exercise ever. It's the best exercise. I call it a mind dump, where you literally just like, what's everything that's inside of me, that's programmed inside of me in regards to this word, you get it out. And you can see
I always called it minderia, but yours is better.
Yeah. No, actually, minderia is more flowy, so I like it.
I like mind dump, but I'm thinking of like dump like an ass.
Yeah, like it's shitting out of your head. Yeah,
that's why I said minderia. I was trying to say
mind,
diarrhea, but it doesn't
diarrhea.
make sense.
Mind diarrhea. Your diarrhea or my diarrhea?
My diarrhea.
This is my diary.
Get out a blank sheet of paper, just take a shit on your paper, and you should be able to find what you need there.
So I'm thinking for this podcast, either it's going to be called How to Make Perfect Toast or My Diarrhea. Not which would be more attractive.
No. I think it should be both. And I think
How to make diarrhea toast.
How to make perfect toast, my diarrhea.
Colon, well
Just
done.
the word colon, not the symbol.
So the first reason why you're going to have resistance to studying this stuff, it's all that bullshit that's programmed in the words. And the second reason is what everybody was just explaining. Cameron, you made this great point on the last call that we were on. And you said, people have this in reverse. They think they have to love a subject to go study it and be interested in it. Right? But it's actually, you study it and then you grow to like it. But the biggest problem that you'll have is because you don't know the words, it would be extremely difficult for you to want to study something. That's what determines your interest. If you look at something and you're like, I'm sure everybody has had this, where maybe you went to go read something and you're like, I don't understand any of this. Maybe it was some banking document or like something about like the stock market, or something about this IPO and shorting, everybody's talking about that GameStop thing, right? It's like, what's shorting the option puts and calls and all that stuff, right? It's like, because you don't understand those words, you're not going to go read that stuff. So in regards to the Destiny material, to everything that we're talking about, because like Drake and Cameron were talking about, we're not giving you everything. We're giving you, like KT says, the thumbnail sketch. We're taking out like very, very particular points. We're actually not. Let's just be clear. We're literally just studied it all for ourselves, and now we're just talking. That's the truth of it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
just integrated it within, and then you just talk.
That's why our
Exactly.
conversations flow so naturally, because
That's
we
why
all
we-
have the same vocabulary for this.
Right. And that's why we get on the thing and we're like, what should we talk about today? And then we just start talking, right? And so, I'm sure people have got that for Drake and Mitch, right? It's like, how do you plan out like what you're going to talk about in the Hangouts?
Don't.
It's like, I pick a topic, I see what the people need to hear, and just talk. So the point being, the 2 points you're going to run into is, one, you have a bunch of reactions and resistances to the word study and learn and all that stuff, and reading and investigate. And the second thing is, you just don't have the words. That, whether or not you have the words inside of you, that will determine what your interest is. Because why are you interested in the things that you're interested in now? You just got introduced to them either by somebody who stimulated other words inside of you. In other words, check this out because it'll make you money. Or you got introduced as a child to this thing. That's why I play soccer, right? It's because Karen's posting dumb shit in the chat. That's hilarious. That's for secret. You have to come on the
podcast.
Yeah.
I just put my diarrhea for burnt toast. That's the name of the podcast. So, FYI for everybody.
So
I also like interrupting Asif's flow just to put him on his toes.
And so the point is,
wait, would you really be interrupting his flow, or would you be supporting it if you're talking about his diarrhea?
That is a good question.
So if somebody is diarrheaing and you diarrhea into their diarrhea, that's more diarrhea.
That's
I
heavy.
think there's already a movie that's called Centipede 3. Human Centipede. Pretty sure that's a thing.
We're not promoting that movie.
Don't watch it.
Man.
Just watch this instead.
Yeah, exactly. Go to YouTube.
I
So
really like to watch the things that people tell me not to watch. So I think you were using reverse psychology and actually you want us to watch it.
Yes.
that's the secret.
Don't.
You're the chosen one, Jess.
That's what we should call this episode. Don't study Destiny.
I actually like the title.
Don't study.
Spells.
What'd you say, Cameron?
Spells.
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 Instead of
gotcha.
bars, we just say spells. If someone starts casting a spell like right live on
Oh,
the episode, you're
spells,
like,
man.
spells.
Spells, bro.
Spells, bro, spells.
What is that?
I was just gonna start using that. It's gonna catch on.
That's good. Yeah, guys, that's what it is now.
That's
and
so
everybody's gonna
fetch.
listen to. I forget that people are gonna listen to this. There you go. Now you have the new
I
lingo.
do that sometimes too.
You see that it's gonna catch on the Hangouts and all that stuff. I guarantee you that you're gonna have those precocious people who are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, spells."
Hey, that's actually pretty cool. Yeah, we're making our own culture here.
Yeah,
Spells.
yeah. Join our
Spells,
join our
maybe
culture.
those spells, Asif.
Join our culture. Excuse me. I didn't say nothing. So the consequences of those two things. All
Wait,
your reactions,
Spells
resistance,
and diarrhea.
spells and diarrhea, and burnt toast. Exactly.
Yeah, go back. Give us the two things.
Context. I can
Yeah.
only understand if I have the context.
In terms of your resistances and all the bullshit inside of you in regards to learning, the things that will keep you from being consistent in studying and educating, because you have to realize you can't just do the writing and just do TechnoTutor. The point of TechnoTutor is to develop your ability to understand. And the point of writing is to study things and then integrate it into yourself. You can do self-forgiveness all you want, but if you don't understand what would actually be best, what are you doing self-forgiveness for? Like, I forgive myself for reacting. Now what? It's like you have to know what outcome you want to produce and guide yourself towards that with self-forgiveness. So the point being, that's what the study is for. You can't just expect to solve all your problems without actually leveling up what you understand of reality. Because at the end of the day, the reason you're having problems in your life is because you are not considering all of life. You're not considering how relationships work, how money works, how stability works, how emotions work, how reactions work, how characters work, how communication works. Why do people listen? Why do they not listen? So now all you're doing is you go to talk to somebody about this stuff and you get frustrated and you blame them because they're so stupid. Is that taking 100% responsibility? The only way that you can take 100% responsibility is through educating yourself. And what I was saying is the two things that will keep you back from that is your reactions to studying and learning, which you must take apart. And the second thing is you don't have the vocabulary, so you're not, quote unquote, interested. You get interest on the things that you invest in.
Ooh.
Spells.
Spells.
Seriously, though, you see how that works? This is a layer of vocabulary about
Definitely.
understanding how everybody says, oh, you got to invest into yourself. You got to invest into yourself. That's a literal phenomenon, or it's an idea that you have to live. You get interest when you put money into an investment.
Yeah.
You get interest when you put energy into yourself. In other words, integrate the vocabulary in order to understand, and then that will draw you towards doing things and studying things. This is why the word vocation, in other words, the word vocation means career. The reason why career is important is because career equals what you do for money. That's why the word vocation comes from the same word as vocabulary. What you do for money is the externalization of your vocabulary. If you change your vocabulary, you change your career, or you at least have the option to change your career, right? And then based off the other vocabulary that you have of what you see as valuable, that will determine what career you choose and the money that you make. So the first part is you don't change your career and then start learning. It doesn't work like that. You learn and then you develop the interest. So the point that Cameron had mentioned before is everybody thinks that you have to enjoy something and then you go learn about it. Oh, that's got my interest. I'm going to go learn about it now. It's like, as you learn about something, it develops interest. Usually the thing that you just became interested in is because you learned something about it. And then you're like, wow, I want to check that out more. Now, what are the consequences of not going through these 2 points? How does the average person experience themselves in regards to, okay, remember how we were talking about those points about how we read, but we don't learn anything? And then we go out into the world, we have no certainty. We never ask why. We don't understand how anything works. We wonder why we can't manage our money effectively. We wonder why we can't create an effective relationship with a significant other. We wonder why nobody listens to us. We wonder why we always get in fights with our family. Isn't this how everybody experiences themselves? So those consequences, these are all the pokes that are coming at you. keep poking at you because you're not actually educating yourself to do more, right? It's like when your phone gets an upgrade, apart from the bullshit, like, planned obsolescence and all that. It's like the point of an update on your phone is like, oh, let's integrate your phone. Let's integrate new features into your phone so you can do more. So your phone can do more, right? That's what education is. What's your ability to do more? If your phone can't do the thing, guess what? It needs an upgrade.
Yeah.
So as
When was your last upgrade?
right?
Like, are you still running on the same exact patterns for the last like 10, 15 years, maybe your entire life, where you haven't upgraded at all?
And that's why it's a daily process. Literally, every fucking day, right? Some days more than others, because there is, Cameron made this, I don't remember what you said this on, but who you really are, you're not an extrovert or an introvert or a confident person or this or that or this kind of sport player or this or that. Who you really are is a principle. You are the living words.
Oh,
And
not like of a school.
no, you're not the principal of a school.
Because I hated my principal.
Good. You don't hate yourself. It's
Why
okay.
did you hate your principal?
You just take it.
Principal as in
Called to the
But you're
principal's
a
office?
We'll
specific,
Or
get
are you
into that
scared to
later.
get called
We'll get
to the
into that
principal's
later.
office?
you're a specific principle.
Mm.
You are the principle of change. That's who you are. That's why your entire mind is designed to do the literal opposite thing, to make sure that you don't change, right? And the point being, if you don't acknowledge that, then you're going to keep accepting all this other bullshit about who you are, right? I'm just not that kind of person, right? I just don't like studying. Like, that's not for me. Yeah, I had somebody tell me, and I've heard this many times, and that was that person. I hate reading. I don't write. No, that stuff isn't for me. It's like, yeah, I know why. I was the exact same way. I didn't read a fucking book till I was like 18 or some shit, like 16, 18 or something like that. Other than what my parents would read to me. It's crazy to me in school and all that. My point being that so long as you don't really consider who you are, so long as you can't see the consequences of not understanding what the fuck is going on in reality, you're going to keep creating consequences for yourself. And consequences is it's not a good or bad word, but I'm talking about it from the perspective of you're going to create consequences that you don't want.
Yeah.
For yourself. And the reason why is for this reason. You are not educated. You are not. Did you guys ever get programmed with the word, what it means to be considerate? If you're be considerate of others, it means like to be nice.
yeah.
Of course.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's like consider means to take things into account, to think about deeply, right? So you have to be considerate of all the variables that are at play. Now, the interesting part is because of your lack of education, that's what creates inequality. That's what we opened with. Remember, if you try to pass on the resource management to the people, we're just going to create a hierarchy out of it, where the smartest people are responsible for it, right? And that's what governance is, anyways. They're just swapping out the word, right? So that's what creates inequality. It's the lack of education.
Yeah.
And it's the inequality. But it's the inequality. That's what creates doubt in everybody. Because that's what's creating that point of, oh shit, that person knows more than me, then they're going to be able to take advantage from me. Or that person knows less than me and they're going to come after my shit.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that create?
Fear.
Fear. Right? We're all afraid of each other.
Yeah.
And then that fear creates a bunch of blame because you're like, oh, well, it's not my fault. It's because of that person and all this. It's because of the government. It's because of Jeff Bezos and George Soros and the CCP and like everybody else but me. And that's what creates all the anger.
Yep.
And the anger, what does that create?
Evil.
Evil, right? Why do people shoot up schools? Why do people rape? Why do people get on fucking Twitter and just verbally like just like try to destroy people even when they're totally wrong?
Yeah.
And they'll defend themselves to the death for some idea that's not even serving them.
Yeah.
Right? It all comes back to a lack of education. And so long as we continue to not acknowledge that as a group, right? And so long as the people listening to this do acknowledge it, but don't actually fucking do anything about it, you're not actually actively working towards re-educating individuals or supplying them with the tools to re-educate themselves. Well, we already experienced the poke of consequence. Right now, we're experiencing the flick. Hey, time to wake up, everyone. What do you guys think the slap's going to be? It's not going to be pretty.
No, not at all. I mean, you know, it's funny because we're seeing a little bit of this flick right now going on with like the whole GameStop thing, right?
Right.
Oh, you said it. Now we're banned. Now we're banned.
Right?
I know. I just got an email from this.
Think about the name of the company.
The game stops. Boom, boom.
It's like the game stops. Like this is when the game stops. Now it's like, yeah.
I just got an email from a brokerage that trades options that we're on, and they said, "Hey, we just reopened trading for the GameStop stock and a couple of other stocks. We just reopened options trading, but we're going to be heavily monitoring the situation. So, if that shit happens again, we got you, whoever you is. You know,
Fascinating, huh?
Yeah.
What does that tell you, man? They don't give a fuck.
It's
about
really,
you.
really clear. Because like the whole point is they're saying you, the little guy or the average person, are not able to compete or be a part of what we've created. Yes, it was free market. Yes, you could do whatever the fuck you want. That's what we were telling you, but we lied. We lied this whole time. Sorry. The jig is up, right? It's like, okay, so it's funny because it's really clear and out in the open. And I think we were having this conversation previously, like earlier in the week, but like it's now becoming more apparent that everything is like this. Yeah. Everything that you think that there's fairness or equality or you have some say in, they're showing you they do not give a fuck about your say. If it doesn't go the way they expected or wanted or how they planned for it to go, then they're going to stop it and they're going to reset it. Oh, said another word. It's like
isn't that how school works? Isn't
explain.
that how parenting works? Same shit. It's like it's not about you and what you care about. It's like this is the way it goes. If you try to fuck around and game it, no, you don't get to do that.
Dude, yeah, such a good point. It's like that point of when you're saying to your kid, like, hey, you need to do this because I'm the parent, right? Which is completely different than I'm suggesting this because I know better, right? Because I have more experience, right? That's completely different. But it's the same thing that the system is doing is, no, I'm the hedge fund or
like,
I'm the one.
We know better. Like, you don't know what you're doing. Let us do it. We're the experts.
Right.
And in reality, those hedge funds don't give a shit about the average person.
No.
You know, it's funny. I Googled GameStop earlier today, I think it was GameStop stock or something like that. And the highest, it's amazing because I see it so clearly now. Is like, and I'm sure many people already see this, have been seeing it for a long time, but they're just using it to impulse a bunch of things that they've always been impulsing. The first one is, I'll leave the first one for later, but one of them is the 10-year-old Texas boy hit it big.
Saw that, yeah.
impulsing this lottery point of like, look, like he's a hero because he made money on the market, and like, you know, things can change for you, kind of thing, right? For GameStop day traders, the moment they've dreamed about, right? Texas boy 10 cashes in his old GameStop shares for thousands, but
He made
really?
$3,000. It's like
exactly. I was like, thousands. That's not even. But
you could probably buy like 3 games at GameStop now.
but here's the thing. I read one headline. The first one that I read was the GameStop situation. If it shows us anything, it's that anybody can win at the game.
But
Didn't
that's
it literally show
exactly
That's what it said?
the opposite.
The opposite. Yeah.
It's like from I
No,
don't
but
know.
actually, hold on. Let's just step back for a second. Imagine they're writing that to the elite.
Oh.
And their elite are like, oh shit, okay, what can we do? Because that's what I see. I see it as all this stuff. I see people on Facebook and so forth like acting like it's some kind of brave, amazing thing that they did to do all this with GameStop. And I don't see it that way. I just see it as it's financial terrorism. You know, and the reality is that doesn't mean I support
who did what was heroism? The part when they shut it
people
down.
who
Reddit.
are like fucking over the hedge funds.
Yeah, okay.
The Reddit folks,
Because
yeah.
ultimately it is going to destabilize things. And if the hedge funds lose billions, all the boomers lose their pensions. You know what I mean? So I'm not defending it like we need to keep it and not change anything. I'm just saying that's not the way you change it. All of this is going to all that's going to happen from this is that the elite are going to find ways to use this to justify more regulations to squeeze everybody out. So good job, everybody. If you thought you were gaming the system, you weren't gaming the system.
I like that point that you made of like, you're reading it as if they're writing it to the elite, because I'm reading, I just started the book Diamond Age.
A good book, yeah.
Yeah. And they're saying in the beginning how it's like depending on what class you are, you get a different newspaper, right? And so if you're middle class, you all get the same paper so that you're all thinking the same. They want everybody in their class having the same access to the same information, right? And then if you're in the elite, you get a completely different newspaper, and it's like even formatted differently and in a different medium and everything. But that's how you know what class you're in, depending on what news you're privileged to get, right? But just looking at it from that starting point of the elite read these things differently than the average person, you know, like where the average person is like, yeah, it showed us we can win. And the elite are like, fuck, it showed them, or it showed us
that they can win at the game.
that they can win at the game. Okay. Yeah.
We need to change.
And what we're seeing, like, you know, really clearly is like, it shows that they're just going to regulate everything. Nobody's going to have the opportunity to win this game anymore or ever again. Right.
What I saw in it is it's impulsing the same point of, here's what it said specifically. It said, GameStop drama has no real winner, only proves both sides can play the game. And basically it's like what I see it's suggesting is like, or the result of it is more people getting into trading and stock trading and all that stuff, thinking that they can just make money.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to end up fucking themselves over. And
Big time.
They're just wanting everybody to dump all of their cash into the market.
It's like a casino, like really big time, like a casino. And it's more evident now than ever.
They're just advertising the jackpot.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's the perfect way to sum it up.
Because with the casino, what's going on is like, you know, 90% of people are not winning, right? And the small percentage of people that are winning, they win like, okay, you won one, but you'll be back and you're going to spend all that money here. Or maybe you don't, but who gives a shit? Because we're still raking in way more money than that, right?
How many people, after they saw that movie 21,
went and try to learn how to count cards?
wanted to go how to figure out hustle cards in
Yeah.
casinos? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, look how they did it. And it's like the story and everything.
Yeah.
So this is like the poke of controlling all of the financial markets. Right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, for sure.
hey, look, we can do this, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that's the product of any system that doesn't fundamentally change the monetary system. Obviously. And so long as we continue to accept this within ourselves, and what's the proof that we're accepting in ourselves? We're not telling other people about the alternative, the only solution. Not telling people about what we're doing is the acceptance of, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it?
Spells.
Straight up.
Right. And so, but you know, it's important because we talk about the word spell and we have before. It's like you have to spell it out because everybody, if we've learned anything, it's our vocabulary that fucks us up. So when I say we're accepting it, it's like, what does that mean? Accept. I'm identifying that word and then explaining what I mean by that, because it can be kind of vague or general. And that's why the whole point of listening to this stuff is so that you are being impulsed to do something. And the point to acknowledge is, unless you're doing something, you're not going to be happy. Everybody's just like, wow, why isn't my thing working? It's like, because you're not considering reality, right? Why isn't my relationship working? It's because you're not considering what makes a good relationship, right? So long as you continue to not do that, here's the thing I realized. It's like everybody wants to change without having to change. Everybody wants to like get different results without actually having to like change what they're doing. So it's like, I want to stay in my job, but like do what's best for all. Like I realize, man, I've been so selfish. Like I understand that point of doing what's best for all. I want to do what's best for all and keep my job.
Yes. Say it again. Say it more.
You tell me what you hear in that.
Okay. Because so many people want to change without having to change. It's like, I see that all the time. Where it's like, yeah, I want to live a better life, but can I do that while I still get my work done? And, you know, I still want to go to university.
Can I keep smoking weed? And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I want to change. I want to like reformat my mind and completely change my subconscious patterns while I smoke.
You know what happens to weeds?
They get pulled out.
Yeah. Fucking Monsanto creates some like,
or they choke out the thing that you actually want to grow.
Oh,
and then eventually you just mow it all. You just mow it all down.
Right.
So if you want to be a weed, just keep
mowing the
smoking
lawn.
Weed.
Is mowing the lawn communism? Bringing everybody down to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Like, if you want to be a weed, keep smoking the weed.
Keep smoking weed.
Yeah. And the same thing with alcohol, same thing with any drug, right? It's just like people like want to hold on to this aspect of things, yet they're claiming they want to change. You're not actually changing.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're not going all the way with it, at least.
I had this realization yesterday. I was listening to Equoff, and it was like a point about weed that was brought up, and it was like it made it so obvious to me of like, picture someone who like smokes weed, right? Or like yourself, if you've ever smoked weed, right? And you're like, oh, I'm so like peaceful, right? But if you didn't have the weed and you were in that exact same position, would you be that peaceful? No. Okay, that is point blank. That is fucking obvious. That weed is suppressing everything inside you. You will not change. You will not stand up, and you are fucked.
You want to see them get not peaceful? Tell them they can't smoke weed. They're gonna get real aggressive.
Yeah.
No,
you don't get it, man.
You don't get it, man. It's like the key.
Now, obviously, like,
from a bunch of former potheads, right?
Yeah.
So we understand what the appeal is.
Yeah, exactly. So the point isn't to judge it from the perspective of you're bad if you do it. It's just, what do you want?
Yeah.
Right. And so
is that who you want to be? Yeah.
Right. I was talking to somebody and they're sharing like they decided to do like a phone cleanse. Right. Be like, okay, somebody else take my phone for some time.
Oh,
Like, because I've been using it to entertain myself for so
Oh, I
long.
thought they were gonna have like someone talk to them in like guided meditation. That's what I thought when you said that.
Vocabulary.
Oh, I can imagine that's a thing.
Dude, that's totally a
Probably.
thing. That's totally
Probably,
a thing.
yeah, 100%. But the point is, they started investigating this point of like smoking weed, right? And like, why do I always smoke weed? Like, I'm smoking so much weed, right? What's triggering it that makes me want to smoke weed? So they stopped. And then they finally spotted the point. They were using Technotutor for some amount of time, writing for some amount of time, developing their awareness. Like, holy shit, this really makes me aware of things using Technotutor and all that, right? And they realized the thought where immediately after they're like, man, I want to get high. You know what they realized?
What?
They want to get high every time they think, I just want to kill myself.
Oh, fuck.
Man,
Yeah.
Spells. That's
But you see what I'm
self-medication.
saying? It's like they walked the process very well. And it's like, the point isn't that quit weed, don't just suppress it, just throw it all away and never look at it. Like, it's like, if you just suppress it and push it down in yourself, it's going to pop up somewhere else.
yeah.
The point really is to
Look
okay,
at why. Yeah.
exactly. And you'll have to stop to look at why. If you fall back into it, just continue to investigate. Don't judge yourself from like, fuck, this doesn't work for me. All this. It's like, okay, why? What made me want to smoke in that instance? So
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah, it's actually good that time when you fall, because then you can look at, okay, why did that happen? What was it that was going on? What was my thought process? Why was I obsessing over it? What was I feeling? So
Yeah.
don't turn it into, oh, I fell again, I'm such a loser. And because that just like is an excuse. Because you
Right.
feel
I'll
like
just
you're a
try
good
again next
person for
month.
beating yourself up. Like,
Right.
oh, at least I recognized I was bad. It's like, no one cares about that. No one cares about your feeling bad about it. It doesn't help.
Right. But also don't turn it into like, no, Cam just said it's okay when I fall. It's a good thing when I fall. So I'm just going to keep falling.
I'll
It'll be
keep
good.
smoking weed and ask myself why I want to smoke weed.
Yeah. If
Now
you're
I
riding
can-
a bike and you can't get more than 10 feet without falling over, you don't know how to ride a bike. You get no credit. Okay. But learn something when you fall. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And so that person realizing like, oh, I just keep thinking I want to die. So then guess what they started looking at?
Why do they want to die?
Exactly. They're like,
That's
what
so
is it
good.
in my life that's making me feel like I want to die? They haven't smoked weed since that point. Right? And I really commend that person. So the point being that in terms of us getting fixated on the weed point is like, use it not as a point of judgment, because if you just say, fuck, I got to quit because somebody said I should quit, it's like, you're not learning anything. Look at what you were using that for. Right. Now going back to was that earlier? What were we talking about before?
GameStop? I don't know. Spells.
Toast.
So
Diarrhea.
spelling it out from the perspective of if you accept the system.
Oh, it actually was spells.
Exactly. Spelling it out from the perspective of accepting the monetary system is when you don't talk about it. Well, you can't just as we're talking about all of this, when you're listening to this right now, you might have some energy running through you being like, yeah, this is such good stuff, all that stuff, right? But stop for a moment, because we're talking about the experience of consequences, where you have things in your life that you don't like because you weren't educated to consider all of life holistically. And so if you're listening to this right now, let go of this point inside of you where you're just listening. Snap out of that for a moment and consider, when you're not listening to this podcast in an hour from now, when you're laying down in bed before you fall asleep, what are the things that you're not willing to face? What are the things that you can see that you're holding back on? What's the thing that you're afraid to do? What is the thing that right now you know is best? The thing that if you were to commit yourself to it, you would experience yourself as a more creative person, a more expansive, fulfilling life that you're just not moving forward with. And this is the point that we wanted to hammer home. everybody wants to change without actually changing. You know, we'll get a lot of people will reach out to us and be like, man, I really want to take my life to the next level. Or, I don't want to experience the slap or whatever it is. It's like, okay, do this. Whoa. I see why you're saying what you're saying, but I just can't. Okay, yeah. Look at that. Take that apart. You see, I decided when I was a kid that this is the path for me. Okay. It's time to mature now. It's time to mature. When you're a kid, when you're really, really young, you cannot consider how somebody else is feeling. You develop that. Now, if within yourself, you're constantly feeling like shit, are you using the tools every day? Are you understanding that the point of using the tools isn't just to write and vent and, get out all the stuff in your mind? It's actually to see what's inside of you so that you move yourself, so that you make a new decision, so that you understand what you're doing wrong and do something different. That's the point of this. Because if you're feeling like shit all the time and you're experiencing the world, reality just constantly poking at you and be like, you got to wake up and do something different, you're not going to be able to consider your environment, the people around you. And that's what's creating consequences, conflict in your life. As you slowly turn your awareness outward and start looking at the world around us, the relationships around us, your country, your community, your friends, what are all your friends saying? Look at all the points of complaint that you have. And all of those complaints is reality poking you, saying, okay, then do something about it. Yeah, but look how crazy it is, these US elections and everything that's going on in Canada and here and there. Okay, then do something about it. Oh my God, it's crazy that what they're doing in schools with kids and making them wear masks. Okay, then do something about it. Oh my God, people are so dumb sometimes. Oh my God, you see all these people on the internet talking all this shit about Trump, about Biden, about this, about that, about BLM, about socialism, communism, capitalism. Okay, then do something about it. Oh my God, I just watched such a stupid video. How could this person go on a rant talking about all this bullshit, thinking they know something? Okay, then do something about it. You don't have a right if you're not doing anything about it. You don't have a right to complain if you're not doing anything about it.
And even
let me tell you something.
Even if you did have a right, you're not exercising that right.
Right, exactly. But the point I want to share is I have to check myself for this all the time. And I'm just as forceful with myself and direct with myself as I am being with you right now. That's what it means to accept and allow. I don't accept that bullshit inside of me. I'm not going to allow it in you either. Because it's not just a game. It's not just a GameStop stock. If we are not focused on changing things, then eventually all of us collectively, you in your own individual life, but all of us as a group, as humanity, are going to experience the biggest fucking slap of our entire existence. And then it'll be too late. So don't wait till then, because that would fucking suck, right? That's what we're here to do. So if you took a moment and evaluated, where are you not doing what at least you know within yourself you should be doing? and you're not sure how to get there, that's the whole point of the group. So you have the relationships that is supporting, that's cultivating that inside of you. And if you don't know how to express that, how to get that out of you, that's why you reach out to me, Mitchell, Drake, or Kian, and we'll support you with that. If you don't know how to get to your next step, that's why we invite you to message us on Facebook. But if you still think that you can just keep doing what you're doing and somebody else is going to figure it out, yeah, somebody else might figure it out, but they're not going to figure it out for you. You're going to have to face the consequences to everything that you're doing. And that's the way it's always been. I'm not threatening you. I'm not casting a spell on you. I'm enlightening you.
Spells.
So take the time to take stock of your life, of all the complaints that you have and the consequences that you're experiencing that you don't like right now, and realize you have to change, not the things. You have to change. That's what the group is for. That's what the tools are for. And that's what me, Kian, Drake, and Mitchell are offering our support for, so we can show you yourself. But it's very simple, and it starts with going to the website. Mitchell, can you hit him with that stuff?
Of course. www.self-perfected.com, just like that. And do some of the video challenges. Let's see them. Like, join the group, check out what our video challenges for the week, and
Many
do it.
last time. That was amazing. I
Was
saw
it?
like a lot of people doing it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's really
Last
good.
hangout, over 60 people. We broke
Mhm.
it.
And
Yeah.
consider this. So like, consider this episode is your poke or the flick or whatever it needs to be for you to start waking the fuck up and realizing you can't keep doing things the way you always have. But then you become that poke for other people to say, hey, we can't keep doing this, y'all. So take this stuff, apply it, live your life differently, join us in the group, and then share the episode. Tune into the other ones and share those too. Because do you think the world needs to hear this now more than ever? I sure do. So, all right, y'all. That's this week.
So yeah.
Bye.
Yes.